Commissioner Andor, many thanks for giving up some of your time for ESF-Works today. Perhaps we could start off by asking you to introduce yourself for members of the audience who've not had the opportunity to hear you speak before. How long have you been in your current post and where does ESF fit into it?
Well, the Barroso II Commission started at the beginning of last year, in 2010, and I'm the Commissioner for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion. And this is a very wide portfolio. It has a financial arm, that's the European Social Fund and some other financial instruments. It does legislative work on labour law and health and safety at work, for example. And it coordinates employment and social policies across the 27 member states.
ESF's, of course, had a very long history of investing in labour market policy here in England and across the whole of Europe. How do you see that developing over the rest of the decade in the context of Europe 2020, the new strategy?
What I believe is that the European Social Fund should be fully aligned with the Europe 2020 objectives. In Europe 2020, we set a 75% employment rate as an objective to be reached in 2020. To lift at least 20 million people out of poverty or social exclusion, significantly strengthen school attendance and school performance. That's all in this strategy for social and economic development. And in order to achieve all this, we need not just to think hard, but work hard and support the efforts of the member states by European instruments. And the ESF can serve this. Of course, for that we need to reinforce somehow. We have to find out how the EU financial instruments can be more effective and perhaps better coordinated as well.
So how do you see ESF contributing to Europe's current economic problems, which everybody is very well aware of?
Well, from my perspective, the biggest economic problem of Europe is the biggest social problem as well, which is the unemployment rate. To have 23 million unemployed people in the European Union, which is about 7 million more than just 3 years ago before the crisis. So this is really a major challenge, and we also know that because of this very high unemployment, poverty is also increasing, and of course in various ways, but people really struggle with paying their bills and finding a new job. Especially for the young people, this is a major question. The youth unemployment grew much sharper than the average unemployment rate, and it is a real drama in some of the member states like Spain or Slovakia and Ireland also.
And how do you see ESF's role right now in the context of the current economic difficulties that Europe is experiencing?
The ESF is a fund that helps people to get a job, to get back to jobs, to make progress in jobs. So it's a financial instrument of the EU that can directly support people and their progress in the labour market, developing their employability, investing in skills, developing human resources. And it can actually serve both the supply and the demand side of the labour market. It can help developing lifelong learning, vocational training, people getting some kind of new training, new profession in order to make the next step, the next transition in their career. It can also help raising the demand, because there are some specific groups in the labour market where employing people is more difficult than elsewhere, either because there is a bias sometimes against the older workers, or there are just so many young unemployed that it's very difficult to get them into jobs. And that's why there is a need for targeted programs. For example, in London there is a program that supports apprentice schemes, and this is a huge program, and it works with the support of the European Social Fund.
Are there areas where you'd like to see innovation in what the fund does? Although it's been around for many years and has achieved many things, we still have high levels of unemployment. It hasn't prevented the full effects of the crisis taking grip. Would you like to see ESF adapting, doing things in different ways?
Well, in the last 1 year, we had many conferences to discuss with stakeholders, discuss with the beneficiaries, how the ESF has been working and how to improve it. We believe there is no need for some kind of revolution, because there are a lot of achievements, a lot of good results, good examples on which we can build on. But there is a need for a lot of innovation. because the next decade brings new challenges as compared to the previous one. The situation is different in many ways, and there are some new undertakings, like, for example, in Central Europe and the Balkans, to help the Roma integration, which is a specific social and ethnic group. Now the Roma issue has a Europe-wide dimension as well, and it has been understood that it needs to be supported more effectively than before. But across all member states, I think there is a need for social innovation, to find new ways to innovate social policies, to find new solutions to include the disadvantaged groups, to help them come closer to employment opportunities. And we will develop schemes to support such innovative approaches. We are also friends of innovative finance, like, for example, microfinance, because self-employed people, micro-enterprises, are not sufficiently supported by the mainstream financial sector. And the Commission put forward, and the other institutions agreed, that we need an EU-based microfinance initiative, which has started to work. I believe it has a role for the long run, and it needs to be institutionalized in the set of EU financial instruments.
So do you see the Commission playing a particular role in encouraging new methods and innovation?
Well, absolutely. It only works if there is a broad alliance between the European institutions, the member state governments, the local governments, civil society, social partners. So there is a need for a cooperation between all this, and if there is a new idea or a new approach, there is a reason to test it and introduce it if it can work.
We're here in East London today at a project that works with some of the capital's most disadvantaged people. What struck you in going around and seeing what sort of things they do here?
Well, it's for me a very positive example. It shows that a direct work with unemployed people, especially those who have been unemployed for longer than 6 months. There is a need to build confidence, and with a more confident approach to approach potential employers, there is a possibility to get a job, but many of these jobs cannot be found in the advertisements. They are not advertised, and you have to try a direct contact. And these methods that have been developed here and applied in the last 2 years give confidence, introduce the unemployed people in the practice of looking for a job, and the success rate is quite good.
As you go around Europe and have the opportunity to see how the fund's being used, are there things that strike you about differences in different places, here in London, for example?
Well, what is obviously different here, especially in this locality, the multicultural nature of the problems, and I believe the solutions also have to be multicultural. I don't believe that multiculturalism doesn't work. I think it's just a kind of elementary feature of European society. We have to understand how various social groups, various ethnic backgrounds can be integrated, and to give opportunities for all of them in an integrated labour market needs or requires a specific approach that can be developed in London. I think it has been developed in such cases, and others potentially can learn from it. But it's also true that not every city, not every locality in Europe is so multicultural as this one. So there are specificities which work here, need to be continued, but different communities have to develop their own specific approaches or methodology. But we are ready to support all if they bring success in terms of creating jobs, getting people into jobs, and achieving social inclusion.
The current programme comes to an end in a couple of years' time, at the end of 2013. We know that Europe 2020 will set the overall strategy, but the budget discussions are just beginning to start now. Could you give us an idea about when we'll know what the specific shape of ESF will be after 2013?
Well, in the recent period, the challenges before the ESF have just grown. We have a lot more unemployed people, we have a lot more complexity of the European society, a lot of uneven development and multiple disadvantages in some cases, especially in countries that now struggle with a lot of financial pressure in addition to accumulated unemployment and social dislocation. So this is a problem which calls for a reinforced European Social Fund. That's what I'm working for, that in the next multi-annual financial framework, the European institutions decide to reinforce the ESF to give a greater visibility. The people across the 27 member states actually know about it. And there is such an opportunity. It comes from the EU, which is a wide community, and this is also an expression of solidarity within the European society.
How optimistic are you about the future?
Well, we set an ambitious but also realistic target for us in the Europe 2020. I believe this is realistic to go forward with creating jobs and reach, let's say, 75%, which is an indication of the ambition that we want not just to recover from a crisis, but to achieve a qualitative change. Because before this crisis, there was prosperity in Europe, prosperity in Britain, but social inclusion was not necessarily going ahead. There was a lot of problem with the lack of integration, and a lot of groups were just left behind despite the boom. So we do not only need to recover from the crisis, but we have to achieve a kind of transformation. The job creation, inclusion is really prioritized. And I'm ready to support that with all the available policy instruments, legislative and the financial instruments we have on the EU level.
Commissioner Andor, many thanks indeed for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.